I'd like to call to order the town council meeting for September 20th, 2022, 7 o'clock, Harvey Hearing Room. Roll call, please.
Council Honan. Council Pasillo.
Here.
Council Munson.
Here.
Council Belcher.
Here.
Council DeMarco.
Here.
Council Flockhart.
Here.
Council Aiello.
Here.
Vice President Ruggiero.
Here.
President Lettieri.
Here. Please stand for the pledge. Councilor DeMarco, please lead us.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Minutes from August 16th, 2022 meeting have been circulated. Any discussion, is there a motion to approve the minutes? Motion by Councilor Flockhart, second by Councilor DeMarco. Any discussion, omissions, deletions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Under general information and recommendations, we have a presentation from CASA. And I am happy to say that this is my second night in a row that I'll be hearing this presentation, but it was very enlightening last night. No, it was very enlightening. You guys do a fantastic job and looking forward to it again.
Excellent.
Me too.
Great. Okay, so you're gonna be able to hopefully see the slides.
I hope so.
Okay. So just to start off while we're getting the slides up, I'm from CASA. My name is Amy Epstein. I'm the Executive Director of Community Action for Safe Alternatives. Something we do every 2 years typically, we miss some time during COVID, is we do something called the Prevention Needs Assessment, which is a survey, it's a community survey to find out what's going on with young people in the community. And we partner with the schools to implement the survey for 6th through 12th graders. CASA is, our mission is to help improve the quality of life for all Winthrop residents and provide a safer environment for children and youth by identifying and providing prevention resources within the community. All of our programming is free of charge. There's no one ever has to pay anything to come to any of our programs. We have tons of different programs. We have drop-in programs like middle school drop-in. We have LGBTQ youth group. We have a women's group, a social justice group, a men's group, career readiness, college access. We have open rec nights that we partner with the police department, and we do community events and trainings, and then we have the Winthrop Youth Providers Network. How are we doing with slides? Just keep going?
It's a Google Doc trying to get in.
I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do to help give you access or no?
No, it's giving
not
me
my fault.
ID.
Okay.
I have to ID myself.
You're
Okay.
doing fine talking out loud.
All right, great. I'll just talk you through it.
We
Sorry.
couldn't see it last night
Done it
either.
before.
Yeah, you couldn't see last either. Surprise. Okay, so the next slide, if you could see it, you would love it, I promise. It tells you about how many students in each grade took the survey. So just in general, 809 of the 987 enrolled students participated in the PNA last year. The next slide kind of lays out a lot of folks when we tell you about the survey. The first question is always how do you know the kids aren't lying and making everything up? So we have a little slide to describe how the survey company decides to eliminate surveys. For example, at the end of the survey, it asks how honest were you during this survey, and if you are answering not honest at all, your survey gets thrown out. Same with if you are working, hey everybody. Same with if you're working on, so if they lie about taking a drug, they have to lie the same each time to make it a valid survey. So there's all different kinds of, you can see, yep, slide 4 is the list of ways that we can tell. There you go, thank you so much. All right, next we're gonna move on to substance use. So the first slide is going to tell you about Winthrop High School students and how slide 6. Winthrop High School students and their drinking. So we've been doing the survey for a long time, since 2007, and you can see since CASA started working on these issues, we've seen a lot of improvement, especially in the high school where we saw a lot of the drinking happening, and that's where we focused a lot of our efforts. You can see this year it was still decreasing, as it has over the last few years. The next slide looks at binge drinking, which is something that's often a big issue with our high school students. We see that a lot. So I just thought it would be interesting to show you the orange line is students that have binge drank in the last 2 weeks at the time of this survey. The blue line is the students who perceive slight to no harm in binge drinking. So when we look at prevention, we talk about perception of harm, So thinking about how harmful young people think things are. So as you see, there's more kids thinking it's less harmful, there's more binge drinking. Next slide looks at alcohol use in lifetime, which means ever used alcohol in your life. Something interesting we're noticing this year is that the high school is staying the same or decreasing slightly, whereas the middle school lifetime use of alcohol has increased. And if you keep scrolling down the slides, you'll see the same is true for current use. So that means in the last 30 days, you can see that high school students, it's been decreasing, middle school increasing again. Same with marijuana. We see quite a decrease in high school, and then we have an increase in middle school. And then the same is true with current marijuana use. So the first slide was ever in your lifetime. The second one is do you use it right now? We know that young people who experiment with drugs before the age of 13 are much more likely to experience addiction issues. So we do ask about that specifically in the next slide. Did you use marijuana or alcohol before the age of 13? And you can see actually for both substances it's increasing a little bit more for alcohol. Next slide is about vaping. Interestingly, way down. We're not super surprised as we imagine that a lot of the time that young people are vaping, it's about access and it's about the bathroom at high school. And if you're at COVID, you don't have so much access. So there's been a lot less access to vaping. So there's a lot less addiction to nicotine. So we're feeling like that's probably why the numbers have dropped quite significantly. We'll see what happens now that kids are back in school. The next section is about bullying. You can see the first slide is about being bullied on school property. You can see it's decreasing in high school and increasing in middle school. And then that's the next slide. And then there you go. And then the slide after that, we ask students, you can see here the orange is high school and the blue is middle school. And we ask students, what were the chances that you would be seen as cool for defending someone who was being verbally harassed? So what does it look like to stand up for someone in school, right? And you can see that number is decreasing. So it is less likely for a student to be seen as cool for defending someone that's being bullied. The next slide is not going to surprise you either, since we're talking about COVID moving everyone online. The gray is the most recent survey, so you can see it started with the blue, then the orange, and then the gray is the last survey. Looking at cyberbullying numbers, it is obviously increasing quite a bit, particularly if you're looking at 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. Next section is about relationships and sexual activity. I just have 2 slides. The first one is looking at sexual activity in general. So the blue line is students that have had sex. You can see that's decreasing, as well as students that have sex before the age of 13, again, decreasing. However, so is use of condoms. The last time they had sex, it asks, did you use a condom? Decreasing, so more say no. The next one is about unhealthy relationships and sexual assault. We're looking at some really small numbers here. It's just interesting to look at the increase. So during the past 12 months, someone you were dating or going out with forced you to do something sexual that you did not want to do. We see an increase from 5% all the way to 8%. Again, still a really small number, but certainly a significant increase. During the past 12 months, someone they were dating or going out with physically hurt them on purpose. Again, an increase from 2% all the way to 6%. And then physically forced to have sexual intercourse when they did not want to. Again, we see an increase from 4 to 7. Next, we're going to talk about mental health. None of you will be surprised that this has been a huge challenge. COVID really affected this. Among other things, young people have had mental health issues increasing over time since before COVID. This was something that was really happening in our schools. The first slide is middle school, the second slide is high school. We ask these 3 questions. All in all, I'm inclined to think I'm a failure. At times I think I'm no good at all, and sometimes I think that life is not worth it. You can see the gray line is the last time we surveyed, and there's quite an increase in the number of young people who answered yes to those questions. If you look at the next graph in high school, you can see that over 50% of students answered yes to at times I think I'm no good at all. Then if we look at the next slide, we can see in the past year, if you felt depressed or sad most days, even if you felt okay sometimes, this is a gradual increase. So yes, COVID affected these numbers, but we can see it's been increasing over time. And then if we look down at the next slide, we're looking at the middle school suicide ideation and making a plan. So we have a decrease in, or staying the same in ideation and making a plan, but an increase in suicide attempts, which we can infer that maybe young people are more impulsive. Same with high school, a decrease, and then you'll see that little increase in attempts. The definition of depression, a depressive episode, is feeling sad or hopeless almost every day for 2 weeks or more in a row that you stop doing some usual activities. So we asked young people if they experienced depression. We see that this is increasing again. Yes, COVID played a role, but it's been increasing since. And we see that close to 40% of high schoolers experience depression. This is a new question we asked, which we think is really interesting to look at. How are young people managing some of these feelings of anxiety, depression, and stress? No one will be surprised that technology won the race for how people are addressing it. And then, of course, there's a lot of young people exercising, which I think is great. We thought it was super interesting how few young people reported A, turning to drugs and alcohol, and B, talking to a therapist. So it looks like under 10% reported using drugs or alcohol to manage these feelings, and we do see the numbers decreasing. And then we have talking to a therapist or a religious leader, we have 15%. These are just some general snapshots. Again, I am open to, anyone can contact me and receive a copy of these slides. I can send the link to the presentation. I'd love to share them. I know that the school is thinking about perhaps posting them on the website. So these are, the next 2 slides are something you might want to look at more carefully when you have it close to you. But they're basically snapshots of our risk and protective profile. So if you look at this one, this is the risk profile for Winthrop. And you can see the triangles that are yellow are the Bach-Harrison, that's the survey company norm. So these are more of like a national norm, and then you can see where we sit. The darkest blue is the most recent survey, and you can see there's quite a lot of places where our risk factors are increasing. For example, perceived risk of drug use. So that's the perceived risk is lower, which means the risk is higher. Low commitment to school, much higher. Not a surprise, they weren't even in the building, it's hard to be committed. The next slide is more of a snapshot of our protective factors. Again, you can see a decrease in a lot of areas. Some examples of protective factors are reward for pro-social involvement, family attachment, and you can see there's quite a few places where this is decreasing. However, if you look at the next slide, we have some good news. And the slide after this, I pulled out specifically, you can see those snapshots of risk and protective factors were broken into different sectors. So one of the sectors is school, and if you look at the school protective factors in this next slide, you can see they're actually rising, which is really impressive since these students haven't even been in the building, and they were able to increase some of these protective factors. So school protective factors include opportunities for pro-social involvement and rewards for pro-social involvement. You may wonder how we get to know, how do we measure that? So I just cut and pasted the questions that actually measure those factors. So for example, one of the questions is, in my school, students have lots of chances to help decide things like class activities and rules. That helps us determine if there's opportunity for pro-social involvement. Next slide. Another really great piece of news is that in 2022, last year when we did this survey, we had 90% of students report having someone to talk to if they ever felt unsafe, abused, or needed help. That's up from about 77% the last time we surveyed. So that's awesome news. And then just looking ahead at some of the things that CASA is doing with the community to kind of combat some of these risk behaviors that you see and some of these concerning data points. We have all of our free youth programming. We have a diversion program which works with the police department and the schools around suspension. We're working on getting a clinical intern. We partnered closely with the health department. We're seeking more funds to expand youth resources around clinical services. We have community evaluation and assessment. Again, we partner with the police department very closely, doing things like the open rec nights and other community events. We're working very closely with the schools. We have our job training program, our college access program. We have partnerships with counselors and administrators. And we're looking at some curriculum to bring into the school that can also address some of these issues for the students. And then the last slide is just information about, we have our Winthrop Youth Providers Network meeting. Everybody's welcome. These are all community issues that take a community to solve. They're at 9 a.m. On the second Tuesday of the month at the E.B. Newton. Look at our website, join our listserv for more information, and then if you are interested in asking any questions or you want a copy of this presentation, feel free to reach out to me, and I am happy to be in touch. And that's it.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Amy.
I will put it on the website.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
no problem.
Great.
Do we have some questions for Amy? Any questions? Steve, Vice President.
Thank you. As you know, I am somewhat familiar with CASA's work, but I was just wondering if you could maybe talk to the council a little bit about some of the current events, programming that CASA is doing to specifically help address a lot of the stuff that we just heard from, and also what we can do on our end to help support CASA in addressing some of the issues that are presented here.
Awesome. Great question. Thank you. So we have a lot of, the Winthrop Youth Providers Network is really awesome because it's a great way for us to work not in silos and to come together and really address issues. So an example of something that's going on right now, you can see all the data is really looking at middle school numbers on the rise. And so we're really thinking about the need to kind of work further upstream, back up a little bit even more, and really increase programming for middle school students. So we've actually started a second middle school drop-in day at CASA. So we have Tuesdays and Thursdays are open for middle school. We also, the group came together and talked about, for example, half days. So during half days, we see places like the library and even like the meat market kind of inundated with all these young people with nowhere to go, kind of making some trouble sometimes because they're bored. So one thing we're working on as a coalition is putting together some half-day events every half day for middle schoolers where they can come and get resources. We'll have resource tables, but also games, food. The police do a barbecue sometimes. So really thinking about ways of going to the kids that are having these places that need programming and kind of making things for them. Yeah, so that's, and then we have a social justice group that's been doing some work in the community around different issues. We have, what other things have we just added?
The second part of his question was, what can we do to help?
Yeah, I love that
I
question.
really want to know
Thanks so
what
much.
we can do.
So again, this is a community issue, so everybody's got a seat at the table, and we love partnerships. We do, in the past, we have had a contract with the town to implement some of these resources because again, it's free to all young people, and it is really filling a need. So there is a contract that we would love to renew with the town council. And then there is also always opportunities to support activities and programming. So follow us, follow us on Facebook, join the listserv, find out about the activities that are going on, and show up and spread the word. Thank you. And we love partners. We love people to bring ideas to the group. What do you think the city needs and the town needs? And we're here to meet those needs.
This is the, Joe? No, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask for more clarity. The contract that you currently have, when does that expire, and at what point do you need it to be renewed to make sure you don't have an interruption in service?
So it's actually already,
Expired.
yeah. It was a renewable for
Right.
3 years, and it was supposed to start again July 1. So,
And were you in the budget cycle that we went through that led to the adoption of the current year's budget? Do you guys get integrated into that, or how does that typically work?
They do not.
like, meaning we're our own 501c3, right? So we're,
Right,
yeah.
I mean, I'm just not clear on sort of how we have been able to fund it to make sure we can, if we wanted to fund it again, do we have a set aside for things like this within the budget, or what's the
Right.
mechanism that allows us to
This
enter
is,
into a contract?
and just to answer that and to get into a little bit about what I wanted to say too is, we're talking about our most precious gifts, right, our kids. And the information is incredible, and we thank you for putting it together, but information in and by itself doesn't do a heck of a lot. So we need, we want to try to help as much as we can, and, we made a commitment last year, I think, of $50,000.
Yeah.
And I want to do that same thing this year, so I'm making a commitment to you for that.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
And to go back on Joe's point too, we have to find a way going forward to make this feasible and viable, because you guys do incredible work, and it is very much appreciated. Sometimes, nobody likes seeing the stats and talking about it sometimes, but it's so incredibly important, and we thank you for everything you do, but I do want to make that commitment on behalf of the council for you.
Excellent, thank you so much, that's super helpful. We love to provide free programming for anyone, so.
No, I just said, did you want me to, as far as the source of the funds, last year I think we used
Yes,
the
I think
ARPA
we
funds
should go
show.
through the ARPA funds.
And then we
for
use the
this.
ARPA funds again this year, so that's obviously an
Okay, so
ending
we've got-
source, so
yeah.
moving forward, like you're talking 5-6 years out, yeah, if we wanted to, once ARPA runs out, we'd have to
Come
look
up
at,
with another mechanism.
rolling that into the budget somehow if we wanted to keep that commitment going, so.
Great.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Excellent, thanks for having me, guys. Yeah. That's Amy's job.
Now, still under general information recommendations, we have CHA Consulting,
Let me borrow that wire.
and they're gonna give us an update on the TIPS project. Thank you for being here.
No problem, my pleasure.
You guys get reserved seats?
I know, lucky I got two. Alrighty, let's pull this up. Alrighty, so thanks for having me. My name is Andrew Valkovic. I'm with CHA Consulting, and on behalf of Steve Callan, the DPW, I'm here to talk to you about the Revere Street Reconstruction Project. And just bring you up to speed, what we're gonna do, where we stand right now, and how we got here. Alright, so the agenda, we'll start with a project overview, the extent of the project, funding, high-level facts. We'll go through the history of how we got to where we are today, the goals of the project, how we're gonna meet those goals. We'll zero in on bicycle accommodations and parking impacts in particular. I'll walk you through the project, and we'll also, in particular, highlight the bus stops. After that, we'll get into the next steps and how we get this project from design to construction. And I'm sure there'll be some questions and comments afterwards that we can address. Excuse me. So the project is about half mile long. It runs from McGee's Corner, which is the intersection of Main Street, and Winthrop Street and Revere Street at the south, and ends at the intersection of Crest Avenue, Highland Avenue, and Revere Street to the north. And this project includes both those intersections that bookend the project. Just some stats on the project. There's about 15,000 cars per day on Revere Street. Vehicle speeds between 25 and 30 miles an hour. That's 85th percentile, which implies the speed at which 85% of traffic is traveling at or below. 25, a little bit slower south of Shirley Street. 30 miles an hour, a little bit faster north of Shirley Street. Land use, primarily residential. You have the Winthrop Housing Authority on the west side of the road for a good portion. Some neighborhoods on the east side of the road. You have the commercial areas between McGee's Corner and Shirley Street. And also at the northern end of the project, there's a restaurant, the Dunkin' Donuts, and some small businesses at the northern end of the project. And of course, we have the elementary school off of Kennedy Drive towards the middle of the project. The project construction is being funded through the Mass DOT Transportation Improvement Program, what we call the TIP, and it's on the TIP for $6.4 million for fiscal year 2023. So let's get into the project team. So this is the town's project. You're the project proponent through the DPW. Your responsibilities are funding the design of the project, funding the right-of-way acquisitions. There's a number of permanent and temporary easements that are associated with this work that will be required, and also for securing any permits that are required. We have the consultant engineering firm CHA. We're responsible for the design. Mass DOT has a pretty large role in this project. They're responsible for funding the construction, administering the design process, kind of overseeing the design, making sure things meet their standards and the federal government standards. And they'll also be overseeing the actual construction of the project. And of course, you have Federal Highway, who's just responsible for general oversight. A good portion of the funds also come from the federal government. And other parties involved include the MBTA, the Metropolitan Water Resources Commission, and various private utility companies. So going back to Mass DOT, so Mass DOT, they're administering the design process. So we have to design this project to meet their standards to the maximum extent that is possible. So this criteria includes particularly bicycle and pedestrian accommodations. The thing nowadays is every road has to have bike lanes and sidewalks both sides of the road. If you can't do that, you have to tell them why you can't do that and prove why, if you're gonna use their funding. So, you know, there's various reports and documents that we have to submit to them justifying our design decisions. We go through 25, 75, and 100% design submissions with them. And going back to right-of-way, we have to make sure they're happy with the right-of-way acquisition that we need to secure. So project history, briefly. Project goes back to 2013, where we started and we did the survey of the project. Initially, it included Winthrop Street and Revere Street from Metcalf Square all the way up to Crest Avenue, which was a little less than a mile. We had an initial public outreach meeting in 2014, and after that the project kind of went into a lull period where the town tried to figure out how we were going to fund it and schedule the project, and then in 2018 picked back speed up again. We met with the Transportation Committee to go over our proposed design, and then early 2019 we made a 25% design submission to Mass DOT, and in that 25% design, the scope was just Revere Street that we're talking about today. Since then, we've met MBTA coordination meetings. There's been several of them. The big one was in January 2020, where we went over the bus stops and the bus accommodations. And we had a design public hearing in April 2021. After that, we made our 75% design submission to MassDOT. That was July 2021, and currently we are working on our 100% design. So, let's get into some of the goals. First and foremost, we're looking to improve safety and accommodations for all roadway users. That includes pedestrians, bikes, buses, and vehicles. The MBTA bus route 712 runs through Revere Street, and there's 10 bus stops within the project limits. We're going to be trying to address traffic congestion. Main areas we've noticed is McGee's Corner, the Revere Street at Crest Avenue intersection, and in the area of Kennedy Drive, we noticed some congestion during school drop-off and pickup hours. Other than that, we'll be looking to make some just infrastructure upgrades, addressing poor pavement and sidewalk condition. The stormwater drainage system is old out there and needs to be replaced, and the traffic signal equipment as well is outdated, doesn't meet current standards. So, let's jump into the general proposed improvements. So, first and foremost, we're going to be doing full depth roadway pavement reconstruction. So ripping up all the pavement down to the gravel and paving a new fresh 7 inches of asphalt out there that will last this road for its service life, which is 20 years is typically what we say. Moving on, improving bicycle accommodations. So we're going to be looking to provide at least 5-foot wide bike lanes throughout the Revere Street corridor while minimizing impacts to parking, and we'll get more into that in a couple slides here. Pedestrian accommodations, we're going to be reconstructing the sidewalks and curb ramps for ADA compliancy, and we're going to be looking overall to create a more friendly and comfortable pedestrian environment by reducing crosswalk crossing distances and just making some improvements at some of these intersections where we can. Going back to the buses, so we're going to be relocating bus stops for improved operations and as well as ADA compliancy. ADA, of course, meaning Americans with Disabilities Act. Addressing the areas of congestion, so we'll be completely reconstructing the traffic signals and making some geometric improvements at the 2 signalized intersections. And one other thing to note is we'll be looking to widen Revere Street just north of Kennedy Drive to allow for a pull-off shoulder. And again, we'll get into the details of that. Other than that, replacing the stormwater drainage system. So the whole system will pretty much be replaced. New pipes, structures, new inlets, deep sumps catch basins will provide a measure of increased treatment of the water before it gets outletted. And of course, new signage and pavement markings throughout the corridor. So let's get into the bike lanes. So this graphic here, on the top left corner of the graphic is McGee's Corner. It heads to the right along Revere Street to the north, then picks back up on the bottom left, continues north to Crest Avenue. So the blue shows a proposed bike lane, and the magenta shows a condition where the bicycles and vehicles will have to share the road, and the green shows where they'll be parking under our proposed design. So the design achieves a bike lane on the west side of the road, so towards the top on your screen, from Central Street all the way and through Crest Avenue. And on the opposite side of the street, we're going to get a bike lane from just south of Shirley Street all the way north up until Crest Avenue. And then we'll be looking to maintain that parking that exists now between Main Street and Shirley Street on the east side of the road. So, continuing on. So let's begin the project walkthrough. We're going to start at the south. This is McGee's Corner. Revere Street heads to the north to the right side of the screen. And you may see the fine red lines, just so you know, that's what defines the public layout. So a lot of the work that you'll see outside of those red lines will actually require a permanent or temporary easement. So starting with the signal, we'll be replacing the traffic signal equipment. Will be, all new signal heads, all new posts, all new traffic signal mast arms. We'll be equipping the signal with emergency preemption, which allows when there's an emergency vehicle approaching the intersection, the light will trigger a green phase for that approach so that the emergency vehicle can easily travel through the intersection. Well, for geometric improvements, we'll be just, there's not a lot we can do right in this area. There's buildings right at the back of the sidewalk. So overall, the intersection will function similar to how it does today, but for pedestrian safety, we'll be just bumping out the sidewalks where we can on the northwest corner, which is right, oh, you can't see my cursor, bummer. Just towards the top corner of the intersection, and as well on the bottom corner of that intersection. Just narrowing up those crosswalks as much as we can while still accommodating trucks and everything, all the turning movements that we have to accommodate. But just trying to make a safer pedestrian environment. Moving on to bus stops at this particular location. So the red circle shows where there's an existing bus stop. Blue is where it's going to be under our proposed design. These relocations were coordinated with the MBTA, and a common theme you'll see is that these bus stops are going to be moved to the far side of the intersection, and this is an MBTA preference. It has two benefits. A bus that's on the near side of the intersection in the red circle could potentially block the view of the crosswalk for a car that's approaching from behind that bus. And also, when you move it to the far side of the intersection, the bus has an easier time of re-entering the traffic flow. And so that increases the operations for the buses and reduces delays for them.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
So rather than ask it for each site,
Yeah.
a couple of things I'm interested in are opportunities for bus shelters.
Yep.
Because we don't have many, especially inbound to the heights.
Yep.
And the second is opportunities for tree planting.
Yeah, of course.
So if you could just talk about those section by section as you go through it, that would be helpful.
Yeah, of course. So for trees, yeah, we can look to propose trees. The state will pay for those trees. They're for that. We can coordinate with the town tree warden. We met with them. I think the last time I met with them was last summer, where we kind of went over that. We have some tree removal that's proposed. So we'll be looking to, and I talked with Steve about this the other day, we'll be looking to, any trees that are removed, we'll be looking to replace those at a minimum. And we'll look for opportunities. We'll work with the tree warden to see where we think we can add trees. The problem, along Revere Street is really all you can do is put them in the sidewalk, and those trees tend to die. They tend, every couple of years they tend to die and not do too well. When they're right next to vehicles and traffic, they tend to not last too long.
I have a 100-year-old tree on my sidewalk, but
What's that?
I have a 100-year-old tree on my
Oh,
sidewalk.
I'm sure, yeah. When they get to that age, yeah, they can
don't tend-
certainly,
they don't tend to die.
and I'm all for that, but, yeah, we'll certainly be looking
Yeah,
into
if we
it.
can be a little bit more aggressive
course.
about the opportunities for trees. The other thing, system-wide lighting. This is an important residential commercial boulevard, so the urban design aesthetic of sort of what's representing as people coming into Winthrop and visiting the businesses.
Yep.
It would be nice to have something that's both effective as well as more pleasant looking than the Invaders from Mars style.
Okay, so that's not a component of the project right now. Replacing those would be costly. Of course, we can go back to the drawing board a bit and see what we can do for that. Again, it would be costly to replace all the existing street lighting that's out there now. But it's something we could look into.
MassDOT's got a lot of money. I just saw they got $8
Yeah.
billion of federal money, so why don't you push them a little bit?
Yeah, something we can look into. Any thoughts on
I
that?
could use some of that money.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the poles on Revere Street are aluminum poles, they're town-owned. National Grid won't have any cost bearing on it, it's all underground wiring. Yeah, I mean, we could do something similar to the CBD, but I don't know that this is a major road, it's not a business district. So, you know, those decorative lights aren't gonna be the only source of light that's gonna work on Revere Street.
It could change, as an example, from Shirley Street over to McGee's Corner, where you really want people to slow down, there's a lot of pedestrian activity, and be different for the other set. I agree with you that Revere Street going up the hill and over the other side of the hill is less business district oriented, so.
Alrighty,
Hold our question.
Yeah, if we can hold them a little bit, please. Don't keep
so continuing north, Central Street is to your left, Shirley Street to your right of the screen. So this is, you know, Central Street will begin the bike lane on the west side of the road. We'll be striping that, as you can see, maintaining the parking on the east side. The Shirley Street intersection, we'll be looking to, again, narrow that intersection up by bumping out the sidewalks into the road. That's gonna reduce the crossing distance across Revere Street and across Shirley Street. And actually today, there isn't a crosswalk across Shirley Street. So by bumping out that sidewalk, we can create a safe crossing across Shirley Street in a more pedestrian conducive environment. Bus stops here, minor tweaks. Red again is existing, blue is proposed. So just shifting on the west side of the road, on the Governor's Drive side of the road, just shifting that bus stop back a little bit, get it further away from that crosswalk across Revere Street. And on the opposite side of the road, that existing bus stop kind of straddles that existing crosswalk and that driveway opening. It's not gonna fly with the MBTA under a proposed design, so we're just shifting that back towards Harvard Street where there's a sidewalk, and not a driveway opening. Continuing north, between Shirley and Locust, things will look pretty similar to how they are now. We'll be striping that bike lane on both sides of the road north of Shirley Street. Adding a crosswalk across Revere Street at the Locust Street intersection, so that'll help pedestrians and kids, you know, access Kennedy Drive and go up towards the elementary school from the north. And as you can see, I can't point it out, but just north of Kennedy Drive on the west side of the road, which is the top side of the road here, we'll be widening by about 3 feet so we can accommodate an 8-foot wide shoulder. The idea behind that is to allow during school drop-off and pickup hours, instead of having cars blocking the vehicle travel lanes, they could pull off into that shoulder and, you know, reduce the congestion in that area. And at all other times during the day, that shoulder will function as a bike lane. Continuing north again, so that 8-foot wide shoulder continues north to just before Summit Avenue, and we hit that existing bus stop that's there. So here, bike lanes both sides of the road. We're adding that crosswalk at Locust Street. Not much else is changing in this area. So for bus stops, just on the west side of the road, top side of your screen, shifting that bus stop a little bit south, getting it out of the, you know, Summit Avenue intersection while still maintaining access to that bus stop enclosure, one of the few bus stop enclosures that you have along this road. And on the opposite side of the road, we'll be moving the bus stop from Summit Ave south to Locust Street. That's going to get it closer to the crosswalk across that we're adding at Locust Street, and it's also going to allow us to widen the sidewalk a bit. So at bus stops, typically they're going to want an 8.5-foot wide sidewalk, and that's an ADA thing. It allows the buses to deploy their ramps down, so wheelchairs can get on and off the bus. continuing north. Bike lanes continue, not much else is changing. We're gonna be widening the sidewalk a little bit north of Hutchinson. The bike lane north of Hutchinson actually gets a little buffer strip, so you can see that little buffer strip north between the bike lane and the vehicle travel lane for northbound bikes. Not much else is changing in this area. Bus stops moving the existing one, which is on the near side of Governor's Drive, on the west side of the road, to the far side of that intersection. And the one on the opposite side of the road is gonna stay where it is. We're gonna widen the sidewalk a little bit in that area, as we have the room to be able to do that. And we get to the end of the project, so we're at Crest Avenue now. Revere Street is coming from the bottom of the screen, north. Crest Avenue is to the right, that right leg. Highland Avenue is the northern leg. So again, replacing all the traffic signal equipment to current standards. We're gonna be widening the Revere Street northbound approach a bit, so you'll have, you know, 2 striped lanes, you know, a left turn only lane and a through/right lane and a buffered bike lane. All the islands at the intersection will be reconstructed to try to tighten up the intersection, more pedestrian friendly environment. 2-stage turnkey boxes for bikes, so these help bikes take lefts at intersections. It's typically hard for a bike to be in the right shoulder of a road and then take a left turn. You typically have, you have to cross the vehicle travel lanes. So these bike boxes, which are those little green squares you can see in the intersection. The idea being, if you're coming up Revere Street north, you'll have a green light. You'll go straight through the intersection with the vehicle traffic, and then you'll stop in that bike box on the opposite corner of the intersection. You'll wait for the opposing leg to get a green light, and you'll proceed with that vehicle traffic. So it's just easier, less conflicts with vehicles. And of course, if you're an advanced biker, go at it. Try and cross through the vehicle travel lanes if you would like. For sidewalks, just bumping out the sidewalks on 3 of the corners, northwest, northeast, and the southwest corner. And as a result of the intersection improvements here, there's an existing driveway opening at the Highland Ave northwest corner, and that driveway opening leads right into the intersection. So as a part of these improvements, we'll be closing that driveway opening off. Now that abutter is to the right of Quincy Avenue path there, as you can see. So to help him out, he's going to be losing that driveway opening. We're going to be reconstructing Quincy Avenue path, about 100 feet, just and widening it just a little bit, so because it's in pretty poor condition right now. So, trying to help them out by reconstructing Quincy Avenue path. Make sure I got everything. All right, bus stops here. Moving so here, the bus route, MBTA route, goes right from Revere Street northbound onto Crest Avenue. So we're going to be moving that bus stop to the far side of the intersection. And on the opposite side of the road, that bus stop on Crest Avenue, on the northern side of Crest Avenue, is going to be moved back 50 feet or so away from the intersection. And that does it for that. So those are our proposed improvements. Moving forward, so like I said, we're working on 100% design right now. We'll be submitting that next month. We're in the process of getting our right-of-way plans approved by the state, and once that happens, should happen by the end of the month. The town will be a go to start with the right-of-way acquisition. So that process typically takes, quite a number of months, predicting September to May to acquire all the right-of-way that's necessary for this project. We have 63 impacted properties and about 100 easements that are required. Now, 70 of those easements are temporary easements, so those are just temporary rights for the contractor to go on someone's property. 9 times out of 10, it's just gonna be to reconstruct, a little bit of your walkway where it abuts the sidewalk, reconstruct your driveway opening. And the rest of those easements, about 30 of them, are gonna be permanent easements, sidewalk easements, so 9 times out of 10, again, the existing sidewalk actually goes outside of your layout, of the Revere Street layout. So it's just gonna be formalizing your rights to maintain and for the public to go onto that property. So, those are required by MassDOT. We have to get those in order to secure the project. So after those are done, project will be good to advertise for bid, which is scheduled for June 2023. And then we're anticipating construction won't begin until spring 2024. And assuming 2 full construction seasons, the project will be wrapped up end of fall 2025. And that about does it for my spiel. So I'll field your questions.
Right, so I'm guessing, thank you, first of all.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have learned stuff that they didn't know. And I'm sure that there were an hour's worth of questions
Yeah.
here. And I'm not sure how we're gonna handle that right now, but just a couple of quick questions first, then we'll see how we wanna handle this. But you said at the beginning, it was roughly 15,000 autos a day that travel this route. How many bikes travel this route in a day?
That's a good
The
question.
majority of work is done for that. Do you have any idea?
I don't have that information on me right now, so I can't answer that exactly.
I would think that that's pretty important if you're making all these changes for.
It is, and again, it goes back to the state's requirement, and, I think I don't wanna speak for them, but, we want it, there's not a safe accommodations now, no one's gonna bike on it. So if we provide these accommodations, hopefully we can increase the number of bikes.
I guess the thought would be if that's a half-mile stretch, what do they do after that half mile? So if you could get that
Right.
information, that would be great.
Yep.
Can you just address a little bit, and hopefully I'll get some of the questions, then we'll figure it out, but how many net losses of parking spots will this project?
So I have 8 spots on the west side of, between Shirley Street and McGee's Corner. So that's really only where you have parking right now on Revere Street. So you'll be losing about 8 spots on the west side.
Well, there's parking on the south side by the marketplace.
Yeah, so we'll be keeping that. We'll be keeping the parking on the opposite side of the road.
And when you turn on to Winthrop Street, there's parking there too.
Yeah, we won't be touching that. The project ends,
Which is
50 or 100
terrible
feet.
parking, because it's
So
very
those
tight.
8 spots there, is that it?
And then on the east side, you'll actually be losing another 2 or 3 spots. So they're not marked right now, but so about 2 or 3 spots on the east side due to a bus stop relocation that we have proposed. So
Do you know how many spots there are existing on that stretch of land? Like what percentage of parking are we losing?
so it's roughly 50%. So again, they're not striped right now, so it can vary on any given day. So about I'd say about 50% of the spots.
So Jim, isn't that where the taxi parks only?
Yeah, we can't take questions right now, but
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
there is, the parking at the taxi is still intact, I believe, in this. No?
No, I believe that goes away.
That goes away.
Oh, on that side of the street?
Yep.
Yeah, the bus stop's going there, the new bus stop or whatever, so.
And has this been discussed with, are any of the stakeholders involved in these decisions?
Yeah, of course. So like I said, we've worked with the
I know, you
the
mentioned that bit.
DPW, Transportation Committee, MBTA, and yeah.
Okay, and the road widths, are they changing at all for this project?
Basically the same. Not a whole lot of room for widening. So it's basically,
not
other than that
narrowing
widening that I
any
talked
stretch.
about. What's up?
They're not narrowing in any stretch.
No.
All right, so I'm sure there's a ton of questions. Do you wanna take 45 minutes of questions? Do you wanna take 15 minutes of questions? How do you wanna do it?
Let's
I'm
do
gonna
it.
let you guys do it.
3 minutes max per
Per person?
person?
That's a long time.
I don't
Right,
have
I'm
a
gonna-
lot of questions.
I'm gonna start down with Rich, and we're gonna go, and we're gonna ask a question or two per person. And if I would like to ask if we have more questions that we are able to, you know, you're gonna get back to me on the bikers. We could get you a list of questions that you can answer for us. And I mean, a lot of the stuff we have to go in-house anyway, but, there's another one that Joe had brought up about you answered a couple of his, but you didn't really get into on the buses, any enclosures or anything being added.
Right, so,
And we'll start with Rich.
that's, you know, we've talked to the MBTA about that. We don't have any new enclosures proposed as part of this project. So that's where we stand right now.
Okay, and Rich?
No questions.
John? Councilor Menzer?
Thank you. You said the service life of these new roads will be 20 years. It seems as though is that just like, you know, kind of legalese to cover your butt, but in actuality, there's gonna be more like 30, 40, 50 years?
Well, it's not that the road's gonna fall apart, it's just that before you might need more preventative maintenance down the line that should last.
More standards revised or at the state level and make you have to do it?
Right, and again, yeah.
But this should last us for a long time. The only other question I had was about the easements. Is that literally just a document that you have to ask the resident
No.
to sign, or?
No, it's money.
Oh, so we have to,
Oh, it's gonna be, I'm guessing somewhere between $600,000 and $900,000. Is that wrong?
That was, it was an estimate, it was, you know, we won't know that until.
We get in negotiations, yeah. It'll vary.
so you're saying that we, the town, have to pay the owner of that lot to give us access to fix that area? Or like, let's say, fix the sidewalk?
There's different type of
We
easements.
need, we need to make the offer. Now, the homeowner, there is a waiver that they can choose to basically give a gift. You know, they don't have to, you know, take the money. They can say, you know, it's an inch of an easement, you know, to put a form in or something like that.
Right.
That's a state requirement for the appraisals. I mean, you know, we do infrastructure projects all over town, and we're not using state money, you know, this particular funding source, but we don't go through that easement process for every one of our projects, and
Right.
the work gets done. But again, these are requirements by Mass DOT.
It just seems as though that would, I'm sure a lot of residents don't expect to be offered money and have to go through paperwork just to have a sidewalks treated in front of their building or their property. So it would be nice if we could make that smoother and more efficient, but I don't know how to do that. And less costly. Questions answered?
So the MBTA is going through a bus network redesign that significantly changes a few of the stops along this route. So I think that might be a slight issue. It removes the Governor's Park stop. The bus no longer goes down Crestav. So that's gonna have to change the design of the project. It's one-
Yeah, it's not the first time that they've changed things up on us.
Yeah,
without
I
telling us.
figured.
So, yeah, so when we make our 100% design, the MBTA will see that, and we'll have a chance to meet with them and iron those things up.
Okay. And then just a question, what is the width, and this might be for Steve, but the width of Revere Street from sidewalk to sidewalk right now? like
Curb to curb,
Yeah.
I believe it's 30 feet, 30.
Yeah, it's about 30 feet.
And then
And
how
it's a
wide
little
are the-
wider south of Shirley Street, where you have the park.
And how wide are those sidewalks right now?
They vary.
It varies a lot, yeah. So 5.5 foot wide is the minimum. Most stretches you have much wider. You have a bit wider than that.
Thank you.
Councilor DeMarco?
Thank you. So looking at, I'm gonna focus on, from the Dunkin' Donuts intersection to McGee's Corner, because I live on Revere Street, so I don't think it's appropriate for me to.
Project, those are the limits, bro.
Okay.
You just focus on the whole project.
Close enough, right? So first off, you put the speed limit at 25 to 30 miles per hour. I assume that was the posted speed limit, not what, nobody's radaring anybody and seeing what speed they're actually going, correct?
We do have speed, we take traffic counts that measure how fast people are going.
Okay, so is that what the 25 to 30 mile per hour?
Yes, that's
Okay.
what that's not the posted speed limit, that's the speed that people are actually traveling at.
Okay, and you were talking about widening some of the sidewalks there.
Yep.
And including bike lanes.
Yep.
I'm trying to wrap my mind around how that doesn't narrow the road.
There's a grass strip in a lot of that road.
Yep.
So the
Okay.
grass strip is what gets changed.
Okay, all right,
And, yeah, kind of in front of Dunkin' Donuts where the Revere Street widens out,
okay,
we can still accommodate the necessary lanes.
okay. I was a big proponent of the bike sharrows when we put them in. I have some hesitation about the bike lanes. Especially around the Fort Bank School, when kids are going to school. You know, that's something that I'm fearful of, because, you know, I can tell you right now, when I leave my house and so I take my daughter, I have one daughter in the middle school, I have one daughter who goes to the Cummings School. I don't take the right when I come off my street to go by the Fort Bank School. Instead, I go up to the beach, come down, and come around, and take my daughter to the middle school, go back the same way, because there's just so much traffic around the Fort Bank School. I'm really concerned about having a bike lane over by the Fort Bank School. And I know some of my friends won't like that I said that. I know a lot of people who would like to have a bike lane there. But I don't know. I just don't think it's safe.
So that,
I don't.
that right-hand turn lane is being proposed to serve as a
Like a
staging area for cars, you know, between, you know, for drop-off and pickup, and then revert back to a bike lane on, you know, off hours.
Okay,
Again, it's just to try to meet the Mass DOT's requirements.
yep.
If they allowed sharrows, I think, I agree, you know, but right now, they're pushing the designated bike lanes. We can certainly have a conversation with them.
Okay.
And to see if there's any ability to deviate from that, and I don't know, Andrew, how successful that would be.
Yeah, sharrows, from the state's perspective, they're not really even bike accommodations. They're just, you're just putting something on a pavement marking that says.
Come on, Andrew,
Sure.
you can't be a little more positive on
But I agree, you know, you have to balance everything. But yeah, they're really pushing the bike lanes as a designated space. This is where bikes go, vehicles go here, bikes go here, as a safer accommodations for everyone.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Councilor Aiello.
Two quick things. As a trivial comment, as a biker, you're right, sharrows mean nothing. There is, the movement of the T-bus stop near Golden Drive, there is a shelter on, I think it's on Housing Authority.
Golden Drive, yeah.
But it sort of faces backwards to where the bus is coming from.
Yeah.
Have you been able to talk with the Housing Authority about using some of these resources to turn around, if they'd be willing to turn around? That way you can actually see a bus coming. You know, it's a great feature, but it's coming
Probably
from
that way
behind.
for weather.
Say again?
Probably that way for weather.
It could be there for weather, but you never see a bus, but that's okay. Construction phasing, right? You've got two ways out of town.
Yeah.
Revere Street going in there has been a mess. I know a lot of that is ending with the utility. Do we have any sense of what's happening up in East Boston, Orient Heights? We hear about a narrowing of Bennington Street, we hear about a big construction project up at the Heights. When's that happening? How's that happening? 15,000 people trying to get through that area over 2 construction seasons is a lot of diversion around it. And is there gonna be a formal construction phasing plan so that when contractors are bidding on this thing, they know that there are standards about maintenance of traffic and the ability to get out of town in both directions?
Yeah, of
Part
course.
of the documents?
So typically, they restrict when the contractor, and this is what we'll do for this project, there's not gonna be any detours. So it's not like we're detouring Revere Street, of course not. they're not gonna be, the contractor won't be able to block a vehicle travel lane outside of, or during peak hours. So typically, the construction will, they'll be able to, take a vehicle lane between 9 and 3 o'clock. And then after that, they can't block any vehicle lanes. So that kind of accommodates, your AM and PM peak hours.
Yeah, I think it would be worth, just personally, to have a presentation about what's expected on construction phasing from a contractor before the final documents are put together. I do really, really worry. This is such a major boulevard, supporting a school, supporting elderly housing, emergency vehicles, all of that stuff. If we don't carefully think it through and cause a contractor to have to behave by certain rules and understand what's happening at the perimeters of our town.
Yep.
It's gonna be 2 hellish years.
Yep.
And we've been suffering through that stuff already because of the actions of others, not ourselves.
Right. I mean, you've been dealing with the utility work out there,
Yeah.
I'm sure. So yeah, of course, yes, we set guidelines and requirements when the contractor can block lanes, when he can be in the road, and we can give those detailed requirements to you, and meet more about it if needed.
And just a quick point before we get to Council Flockhart, on the 9 to 3, you're talking about a school zone, so it's great at 9 o'clock, but, you have half days that you have to coordinate with schools, and you also have full days that get out at 2:20, so there's gotta be some sort of coordination there, correct?
Correct.
Okay, Councilor
And
Flockhart.
to add on to that, you have the town supermarket in the middle of that. And people use that in the middle of the day. All right, my questions are, we have a serious parking problem in this town, and you're proposing to cut out 50% of the parking that's there.
It's 8 total spots, though. 50% is a big number.
But those 8 spots are right in front of the businesses that are there. They're not mostly in front of houses, they're mostly in front of businesses. So I think that's a
Yep.
major problem.
Yep.
Also, I am very concerned that when you do the crossings, that you not only accommodate all the other normal disability people, but that we have audible crossing lights.
Yep, those are standard nowadays, so they'll have that. They'll have the countdown displays where it says, when it's counting down.
And currently, the way some of the buttons are, they're hidden behind poles and, they're very difficult to get at. So they need to accommodate people who can't necessarily see them or easily maneuver to
So,
get to
yeah.
them.
It's part of satisfying the Americans with Disabilities Act, is making sure we put those buttons where people can easily reach them. And so there'll be all new traffic signal posts. So, we'll be able to put them where we want to put them, easily accessible for everyone.
And my third thing, is I'm very upset that this poor family is losing all their parking when you're taking their driveway away.
They're not. There's probably some clarity on that. So right now, that home has 2 accesses. There's a driveway that comes in off of Quincy Path,
Busy path.
and a driveway that comes off of the bottom of Highland Ave, which spills right into the intersection. It probably never should have been permitted. It's been there a long, long time, well before my time here.
And I do recognize it's rarely used.
And it's just not the proper standard. You don't have a driveway come out into an active intersection.
Does that driveway connect to?
Yes, they have, right now they have 2 entrances to it.
Okay, I feel better.
Vice President Ruggiero.
Thank you, Council President. 2 quick questions and then just a general question, and I promise they're quick. But could you explain the preemptive emergency thing again to us? That was a concept I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, so the traffic signals will be equipped with a receiver. So it will, so when an emergency vehicle is approaching, if it's outfitted with this, it's called Opticon usually.
Okay.
So the emergency vehicle will emit a signal, and the traffic signal will receive that signal and it will change the phasing, so the green light for whatever approach that emergency vehicle is coming from, it will trigger a green phase for that leg of the intersection.
Okay.
So the emergency vehicle can just go right through.
Pretty cool,
Yes.
if it works.
Well, and I think we have to,
Okay, all right.
we have
We have to
to
have a
talk to
conversation
the,
with both chiefs to make sure
Okay.
that their vehicles get the, the equipment.
Got it, okay, cool.
Yeah, it does work. As long as they have the equipment, it works.
If you say.
No, I've been in towns that have, I've been in towns that have, and I watched it, it works.
Okay.
and sometimes you'll see they have a little strobe on some signals, you might see a little
Okay,
strobe,
maybe
so
Yeah,
it's
flashing
the same
when
thing.
it goes, yeah.
Got it, okay.
Not to
Um,
be confused with the snow.
The Crestav intersection, it's Crestav, Revere Street, Highland. When you're coming down Crestav onto Revere Street heading out of town, and if you're not heading out of town, you want to take a left up the hill. That's a difficult intersection to navigate right now. Can you maybe just explain to us again some of the enhancements in that area to maybe, I'm not sure if anything's being done to take care of that left coming off of Crest onto Revere, but
So it's difficult just to make that left,
to begin with, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. But the pattern's gonna remain the same, it seems like, or?
The pattern will, yes, the
Okay.
phasing will remain the same, it's just that we're kind of restructuring the island so that it's more with, the revisions to this are more with pedestrians in mind. But in terms of getting left out of there, there's just not too much room that we can add
Right.
lanes and things like that in this area, unfortunately.
No, that is what I figured, I just wanted to kind of make sure.
It's doubly difficult if somebody's making a left from Crest to Revere and a left from Revere up to Highland.
Someone's crossing, yeah, right, exactly, yeah. And then just, sort of in terms of procedure here, so the council voted, I believe, years ago to accept the TIPS project funding and move forward with this as is. When was, that was,
Oh, it was 5
Years
years
ago.
ago?
Five,
Yeah,
okay, all right.
5, 6 years ago, yeah.
do we have any, flexibility with this at this point, or is this just up to Mass DOT code and standards, and, I mean, where are we at here procedurally with this?
Yeah, there's, of course, we can accept your, see what you make changes. There are certain things that can't change at this late stage. There are certain things we can do.
Okay.
The trees, we can go back to the drawing board with the MBTA, I think, on some of the bus stop enclosures and things like that. I don't think at this stage we'll be able to, change the bike lanes.
No, and I'm not saying
Stuff
that,
like
that
that.
issue in particular, any one issue in particular, but just,
So, yeah.
what are some things that we could request of you that we could kind of be amenable to, if anything at all? I mean, that's, because this is the first time that a lot of us have seen
Yeah,
this, so
for
I
sure.
just want to be productive instead of asking for things that can't be changed.
Well, I know you guys, you plan on submitting some comments to us and some questions, so, we'll field all those and we'll take a look at all of those, and we can get back to you with what we feel we can change and approach the state with, and what
Okay.
we feel is probably set in stone at this point.
So it needs sort of state approval, that's the,
At the end of the day, yes, it does.
Okay.
need state approval.
thank you.
If we have
And
further
just-
questions?
no, Just one more question from Councilor Aiello, and then we're stopping this, and we're gonna submit questions.
So the state's budget was set 5 years ago on this, and we've lived through a pretty extraordinary period of inflation.
Yes.
There's a very strong argument to be made that number should be adjusted upwards. The state's got a lot more federal money coming in, they haven't allocated all of it to the various projects. If the council chose to want to engage in trying to push that number up, would it be effective? Well, if the town did, would it be more effective for the council to consider writing a letter, making a request and stating our case? Or is it best done at the project level? But I do think that we ought to explore more money, because that $6 million is not what $6 million is today, right?
It goes quickly, it doesn't buy you
Yeah,
what it needs to buy
and
you.
so I just worry about budget and being able to have this thing gets done once, we won't gonna get it done again for another 30 years.
Yeah, so it's a fiscal year 2023 project, so that's next year. That funding year actually starts this October. So, of course, I would suggest if you a support letter from the town council expressing, you know, increased funds for this reason, X, Y, Z. I think that would help. We would have to definitely, we would approach it from our end on the project management level as well. But I think we'd have to kind of, you know, we'll field your comments, see what you have to say, and see how much these things will cost, specifically what we're requesting and how much money it's gonna cost and why.
All right,
So,
thank you. And, you know, you did talk about 30 years lifetime, you know, you just
yeah, it's,
throw it out there. I know, it's just a
Yeah.
term, but, and you talked about drainage for infrastructure.
Yeah.
Water, gas, utilities, are we all set from that?
Gas is gonna be, coming through, this coming year. They wanna coordinate, they're actually gonna do the gas, replacement during the project construction to make sure that there's no, conflicts with drainage and the gas.
Yep.
The water, you just approved a water main project, for that leg of Revere Street and Crest Avenue. So we'll be working
Same
on that to
time.
get that constructed next year prior to the project.
Okay.
And then the drainage will be brand new.
All right, thank you very much. We'll have some questions for you, I'm sure.
okay,
Appreciate
thank you
your
very
time.
much.
How do we send questions?
We'll generate questions.
I'll send it to you.
Amongst the 9 of us, we'll go to Denise and.
Okay. We'll each grill them individually.
Public hearing. Going to open a public hearing that the town transfer $195,000 for fire union retro transfer from salary reserve collective bargaining. The public hearing is open. I will hear from anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this matter. Anyone on Zoom that wishes to speak on this matter. Any counselor that wishes to speak on this matter. Counselor Fusillo.
Yeah, we met about this earlier. I'll go into this again during when we talk about the committee meeting comments and stuff, like committee reports rather. But after speaking to the town manager about it, I mean, this is part of those like bills need to be paid type of thing. So nothing else that needs to be said about it.
Okay, so this is basically a contract that was settled for fiscal '22 and fiscal '23 and fiscal '24. So this is taking the retro part, this money is accounting for the retro part of fiscal '22, and there was a small step classification adjustment also, and then it will carry over into this fiscal year '23 plus the fiscal year '23 portion. So that's where the $195,000 comes from. And we will go over this in old business. Any other questions on the public hearing? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. We will go to public comment. We will start with Zoom. Anything on Zoom for public comment?
Not yet, nope.
Zoom, one last time for public comment. All right.
In progress.
Any in-person public comments? Mr. Lucero,
You want me to stand?
please. Well, you don't have to stand now.
Oh, man. Paul Lucero from Sweats Liquors, 3 Somerset Ave. So I just have some comments about the CBD area right now. In walking around, I noticed there's a handicap spot in front of the 4 Kids Only office building. It's been striped, there's a pole with a handicap sign on it. The site is 2 full parking spaces away from a curb cut where a handicapped person could get on the curb. I'm not an expert on ADA stuff, but I don't think that's correct. So I just want to make you aware of that. The other thing is, next to my building, for the last 6 months or so, there's been a no parking sign there. I know the council's approved new parking regulations, new parking areas, etc. I was wondering when those signs were gonna go up. It's becoming exhausting for me and the other businessmen on the block to constantly address our customers saying, why is there no parking? What are the stripes for? Blah, 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 blah. I mean, we're just going bonkers with this. So the sooner the better on getting some signs up. It would help our mental health, whatever you could do on that. The other thing is, I'm sure you know there's a flower bed in front of my store. This summer, I know was, you know, drought season and stuff like that. I watched in horror, most of the flowers drying up and dying until I couldn't take it anymore, and I enlisted the help of Frank Constantino to see if he could get someone to water them to bring them back to life. I noticed after that happened, there was some watering going on, but we need a plan for some watering that people know about. I don't know if the council ever thought of approaching the businesses that funded that area before, like I funded in front of my store. I think Savisi's did in front of his area, and it might have been one of the insurance companies that took care of French Square. But again, the planter in front of French Square is just weeds. There was nothing planted there, so, I mean, I'd be more than happy again to plant stuff there if the council wanted to, or let's come up with some sort of game plan that the businesses know about, so we can expect some watering being done, if that's possible. And the other thing I wanna hit on is, there's been like total silence on the middle school. It's like it doesn't even exist. Is there anything going on with that? I would like to see the town manager at least once a month come up and say, this is what's going on. You know, here's where we're at with the middle school. I mean, this thing, I believe, costs about $500,000 to fund every year to keep it up and running and insured. That $500,000 could be put on the books to fund firemen, policemen, teachers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That thing has to come off the books as soon as possible. It's been almost, 8 years that we've been looking at that? Something needs to be done. The town could use that money every year. You wouldn't be scraping during budget time to balance the budget and have to cut this, that, and the other thing. So, again, I'd like to see at least a monthly report on, here's where we stand with the middle school, so people know. And I'm gonna wrap it up. Thank you.
And again, this is public comment. I usually don't respond, but I will address a few of your things because they're easier answers. We'll start from the back because my memory's getting older too. But first of all, we'll gladly take your money whenever if you want to give money for anything. But to go backwards on the middle school, there has not been a lot done over the past 6 months on the middle school. We're trying to get our town manager acclimated to the town. We have been working on public safety first, but we do have a plan amongst the council that you will be hearing from us in the very near future as to the progress on that. In terms of the handicap spot in front of, for kids only, the old First National Bank or the old, do you have anything on that? Why that there's a handicap spot there? So this is on Bartlett Road going up right on the right-hand side. It's not near a handicap access ramp or crosswalk.
Again, I think that was per the ordinance that was in place. You know, the signage ordinance.
It's between For Kids Only and the East Boston Savings for the Rockland
Right.
Trust, right, and the parking is.
So that was put there because of the current ordinance. Okay, so if it's, okay, so we have to address that.
You still have to address all the signage.
No, and we're gonna talk about that later too. And on the live parking on Somerset, I believe that sign, there's a sign there now that says no parking. Is that just a mistake? Can we?
No, again, it was per the ordinance. It's probably just a sign that wasn't removed.
Okay.
yet.
So if, I mean, that should be removed. I don't know. I mean,
There's some old signs up.
There's still.
no, there are still some old signs. We've tried to take some of them down, and I have noticed some old ones, and we're gonna talk about new signs and policies put in place, but you had asked one other one that I wanted to address.
Watering the
Watering,
plants.
yeah, so I had said several months ago, and it might be October, and we're hoping, still want to generate some sort of parks department, not a Parks and Recs department, not a, you know, Exactly, in coordination with a couple of other items. We're waiting, I'm waiting for free cash to be certified to come out with some sort of proposal, but we've said this from the beginning with maintenance, you know, we spent $14 million on that CBD district, and, you know, we can't let that go to crap in 6 months. And it has been an extraordinarily drought-ridden summer, and it's been miserable. Fortunate with the sprinkler system we have in place in French Square, that grass has been kept really well, and DPW's been doing a great job maintaining that. But we do have to get on a system, and I do think this Parks Department that I would like to initiate would do that. I really don't think we should have to rely on the businesses to water plants.
I think
It
we're all the same,
benefits
Jim,
the
we
town.
be collaborative.
No, I understand that, but I mean, I think the
Without-
bottom line is we need a plan. Even just the money doesn't do the plan, still doesn't water the plant, so,
You know, it reflects on my business. I mean, see, people for like a decade have known that I put the flowers out and everything else. They see all these dead things and, oh, you're not taking care of it, what's going on, blah, blah, blah.
No,
So
I
it's,
understand.
it would be nice, and again, like you said, the town spent all this money on putting the green stuff there, and in 4 to 6 months, it's almost all dead. So some of them are coming back now because of the rain and the cooler weather, but,
Right.
you know, it's just not right.
Thank you for your comments, and we will get back to you on the parking in the very near future.
One other thing,
Okay,
just quick.
yep.
With the narrowing of the streets and the bump outs and stuff like that, is there a game plan as far as snow removal?
As far as the center, you're back in the
Yeah.
center.
As far as,
I'd have to revert to the DPW director on that, but we'll get back to you with that information, yes. And I'm sure, obviously they're aware of it, and I'm not sure if they're gonna be marked out or how it's gonna be done, but I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Yes, John?
Yeah, John Morgan, Precinct 4. I know Councilor Flockhart mentioned about the audio cross signals. And I've been personally waiting for them since 2016. And I'm glad that they're finally gonna happen. I would like the council to make sure that the mistake on Crestav on the DCR project many years ago doesn't happen again. They installed all new crosswalk. They installed the audio signals, but they put the light in the street where it was totally useless. The only time it would be useful if there was no traffic, and how many pedestrians are crossing the street when there's no cars. I would like to make sure that when they had put in these new signals, that there be clearly like they have in Orion Heights, they have the strobe light on top, so you cannot miss it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other public comments? All right. Correspondence, Denise?
Yes, we do have a little bit. Julia Wallace and Peter Christopher both sent in the parking memo of 2018 on the CBD, just for us to take a look at and review. Brenda Christopher has a lot of concerns for the parking at the CBD also. Scott Mahoney wrote concern of the racist incident that happened.
Thank you.
President, for me?
What do you,
Responding on correspondence.
oh, sure.
Yeah. So I read the correspondence from the Wright Mahoney household. And they had wanted the council to say something about the racist incident that happened yesterday. You know, it seems like we kind of get into like a little, you know, we had obviously the horrific incident that happened a year ago in June. You know, we've been called to call out racism whenever it happens by our constituents, by our town. And I just want to make sure that the town knows that, you know, we call, you know, we reject racism. Hate has no home here. We call this out in the strongest words that I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth on the council. I mean, everybody, I think, agrees with me that hate has no home here, and we will not accept racist acts like this in our town. That's it.
And we agree, and the chief, the town manager, myself, on behalf of the council, put out such a statement last night, and couldn't agree with you more.
More correspondence?
Yes.
I'm not sure if this came through, but we got a email from Mr. DeCiccio about 32 River Road, and I just want to make sure it's formally noted.
Already working on it. Yep.
Oh, and I answered
Came to the town council about
And I answered him, yep.
activities there. I think it's important.
It's already on our list, and building commissioner and the ISD staff has been notified as soon as it came in, and they're already working on it.
Yeah, no, that's great. I just think it's important to publicly
Yep.
acknowledge a lot
Yeah.
came in, and we understand it's a problem, and that.
We're just
you're
waiting to get a
working on it,
date so we can let them know what the action plan was.
That's great. Thank you.
Committee reports, rules and ordinance. Vice President Ruggiero.
Thank you, Council President. All right, the Rules and Ordinance Subcommittee has been busy since our last full council meeting. We met 3 times, once on August 22nd, once on August 30th, and once on September 7th. I'm gonna try to recap the 3 of these as succinctly as possible, but these were our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th meetings on the ORC recommendations. At our first meeting, if you remember, we had sort of come up with the strategy. In the following meetings, we had implemented said strategy to push this thing forward. At the August 22nd meeting, we decided to sort of start with what we would consider the quote easy items. We took some public comment. We heard some feedback against removal of the use variance, to keep the use variance. And then the committee went on to discuss the following items. We discussed the abandonment clause, we discussed the use variance itself, we discussed the committee chairs being able to elect, or the committees being able to elect their own chairs, and I believe that's where that conversation left. And we discussed the recall provision. We then moved on and discussed the statutory interpretation recommendation, the filling of vacancies on the council, and on other publicly elected positions. And there was also public comment towards the end about the council's role in this whole thing. There was further public comment about the legitimacy of the ORC, and if that if it was a legally viable committee or not. On the August 30th meeting, we continued on with our discussion and discussed the second half of the ORC recommendations. We didn't really go in order 1 through 13. I think we started at 7 and went to 13 and then back up to 1, but that's not relevant necessarily for the purposes of this committee report. But we discussed the creation of the Water Sewer Advisory Committee. We discussed the 2 recommendations on taking action on the budget and the capital improvement plan. We discussed the Airbnb recommendation and bringing that to the forefront of the council and to the manager's office, obviously. We also went over the recommendation made by the committee to increase compliance with the sign ordinances that we currently have in place, and adding a line item to any reapplication for a license to do business in Winthrop, that you have to abide by the sign ordinance at the time of your reapplication. We touched on the use variance again, and then we discussed the council makeup recommendation. This was recommendation number 1. It was 1A, B, and C. And we were sort of delved into that as well. Again, the council's role in this whole thing was questioned, and whether or not we should rubber stamp this and discuss through. But again, we implemented a strategy at our first meeting, and we sort of followed through and executed here. The third meeting was not so much more open discussion. It was rather time for the committee to take some votes on the subcommittee level to make recommendations forward to the council. We had discussed and debated each of the 13 recommendations. However, we're going to hold them in committee for our next council meeting because we need to meet one more time to, I think, take care of a clerical error in one of the motions that we made on recommendation number 1. So I know that was a mouthful, but happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Any questions? Councilor Aiello.
Just for clarification, because I've seen a couple of references to people expressing concern about whether or not this round of work, and there's a lot of work doing there, is actually allowable, given what sort of transpired in the last couple of years and what the council, what the charter says about charter review commissions, et cetera. Have we received a letter from, at one point, you were gonna try to get a letter from outside counsel to clarify? Yes, because it's a lot to think about, it's a lot to work through, and if we come through that whole process only to find out it's not allowable, I think not only is that disservice to the council, but it's gonna be disservice to everybody who's gonna continue to work along.
Let me address this now, please. If we go back to January 15th, council minutes, and February 15th, council minutes, I informed the council that I had legal authorization from KP to do this. So if anyone had any questions, I would have thought that would have been the time before we spent 8 months wasting the residents' time on various committees and such. Second of all, I was, if any public citizen wishes to see a document, they're more than welcome to put in an FOI. Third of all, I got a statement from, first of all, that questioned my integrity on whether I would announce at 2 committee meetings that we are having the authority to do this, I think is ridiculous. Second of all, the fact that the council or the citizens wait 8 months to ask me this is ridiculous. And third of all, if any council would like to see the document dated January 3rd, where I asked several questions, trying to get this committee on good footing, trying to see what we can and can't do to move this town forward, I would be happy to share it with them. So I would encourage the councilors to listen at the council meetings, especially go back to the minutes from January 15th, February 15th, listen, participate in the meetings, ask questions, and ask then before we waste the taxpayers' time. So if anyone would like to see the document, which is a client-attorney privilege, you guys are more than welcome to see it. Just ask me and I will make it available.
So thank you, that's helpful. I think it's important to understand not every citizen who participates in these meetings listens to every council meeting.
No, but the council does listen to the meetings, and the council has been well aware.
It would be great to have the KP letter released.
The KP letter is attorney-client privilege. The KP letter, I have 9 copies of it here. If somebody would like to read it with me, I have no problem showing it to you.
I'm not sure why it's attorney-client privilege.
Well, that's what I've been told by KP, and are you really kidding me, Councilor Aiello, that you think I would lie about my viability?
I'm looking for transparency, I'm not.
I wish people had this kind of transparency when we supposedly signed a trash contract that cost the town $600,000, and not one councilor asked one question at all. They thought it was fantastic.
All I'm suggesting is that we can.
If you wish to see it, Councilor Aiello, feel free to ask me and I will make it available.
I'd like to see it, please.
And next.
I'd like to see it released from attorney-client privilege.
Awesome, that's good.
So that the community can see it.
Finance Committee.
Yes, we met briefly earlier before the meeting. There was one item on the agenda.
It's incredible.
The agenda item was as follows. Motion, I move that the town council vote to transfer $195,000 from the salary reserve account to the fire department budget to cover the costs associated with the FY22 to FY24 collective bargaining agreement or take any other action thereto. This was, as discussed earlier, a result of bargaining agreements. Therefore, the finance committee went forward with a positive recommendation.
Motion coming out of finance with positive recommendation does not require a second. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll have a roll call vote, please.
Council Honan?
Yes.
Council Fusillo?
Yes.
Council Munson?
Yes.
Council Belcher?
Yes.
Council DeMarco?
Yes.
Council Flockhart?
Yes.
Council Aiello?
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero?
Yes.
President Lettieri?
Yes. Anything else, Council Fusillo?
Nope, that is all coming out of.
All right, Memorials Committee. You know what, I will read this, coming out of Memorials Committee, this is from Phil Ronan, they had voted unanimously to have a memorial of Ramona and David Cooper at the corner of Shirley and Veterans Road. And I'm reading this email from them. We felt the placement of the memorial should be coordinated with the council and Director Calla, though we feel this should be acted on quickly. In addition, we also voted unanimously again the last time in August 23rd, 2021, to name the ticket booth at Miller Field after Amy Gallagher. Please give us direction so we can finalize this. Thank you, Phil Ronan. I did get correspondence to Phil, just making sure, as we had stated when the council sent this to Memorials, that we wanted to make sure we had the blessing and the authorization from the families before we did anything significant here. But we do have the approval from the Memorials Committee to do such. So we will get back to you as soon as we have answers to those questions. Town Manager's Report.
Thank you, Council President. We talked about it briefly, just an update on the union contracts. We did come to agreement. You see it's under new business with the police for the prior 3 fiscal years, ending in June 30th, 2022. So that total is in the report to be voted on at the next meeting. Fire, as you announced, you've settled that. Move the money over, that'll be good through 2024. DPW and clerical, we've met with the union e-boards. We have tentative agreement. They need to take it back to their groups to get ratification, and we probably got another 2 or 3 meetings with library, and we should have that contract settled as well. So we'll be set. Other than police, we'll be set, through the next 2 years with fire, and then 3 years with everybody else, and then we'll start working once we get the retros paid out. We'll start working with the police unions to get this contract, the current cycle going, and see if we can get to agreement on that. I did attend my first Council on Aging Advisory Board meeting and the Friends of the Council on Aging. Both great groups. Just reaffirm my support of that group and let them know whatever they need. We're certainly here to support them. I'll be looking forward to many events over there, but it was a good group and nice to meet with them for the first time. Another first, I shot my first video with Ron Vecchia over at WCAT, so that was fun. We did that last week.
Rite of passage.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to doing more shows over there, even on my own, so I'm gonna ask the town manager thing, and maybe bring in some department heads and community members and do something over there moving forward, so. I did send out the form, that Councilor Aiello had asked about for the council. If you wanna start filling that in, we can keep that as a running track record and save it as a PDF, maybe keep it on the website so residents can see what's going on and where the status is on an every couple of week basis.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can it be set up to be printed?
It can be printed, yeah.
No, we can't. Because when it prints into tiny.
Oh, I'll see about, it might just be a formatting thing on your computer, but yeah. Sometimes you gotta mess around with it, but I'll check with Larissa on that, we can see about that.
Thank you.
We did have a pricing, Woodward and Curran. We tried to get other pricing, but we shot down. A couple people that too busy, they couldn't get us back to us, Weston and Sampson and others. But we did have a price, total cost, phase 1 and phase 2, it would be a 2-phase plan for the water system assessment and planning, to get that done for our entire water system, is $247,000. Phase 1 would be $190,000, and then $57,000 for the remaining. So I'll look to bring that forward to the council, and then also the other presentation we saw at the last meeting from Brightly, aka Dude Solutions, about $100,000 for that with the software and the facilities needs assessment, which would get us the capital plan for all of our town and school buildings. So I'll be looking to bring those forward and talk about funding and potential things in a future meeting. Finalizing some projects. The deadline September 30th to get the ADA Improvement Grant Program. We got 2 projects. One is a couple of lifts over at the library for areas where we got staggered staircases to get people up to the different levels And then obviously, working with Director Calla to, do sidewalk improvements around town, so we're putting in grant, requests for both those projects in that grant cycle. Anybody saw, down at the, town landing and the wharf there, we got trees going in, they did a great job on those. Thank you to the, tree group and foundation, bless you.
Thank you.
For that donation. They're starting their project and, more to follow, but they started down there and they look great if anybody hasn't been down there to see them. There's been some questions about it. I just wanted to point out, with regarding to the, 2 trees that were taken down at Atlantis condos there. We did send out a bill for $13,100. I did follow up with them today. They've sent it to the board for consideration. Obviously, they've got a price from somebody else privately to do it cheaper, so there may be some pushback, but they have the bill and we're awaiting payment, so that's where that stands. Well, yeah, either way, so, and there was some sidewalk work, and I don't think they calculated it the way we did, so, we'll have, more discussions, but I did speak with them late today about that, so. And then just as an update, coming up to the next meeting, I plan, with the council, as approval to, do a short PowerPoint, just to update the council on what's known as the Community Preservation Act, CPA program. I know we're not part of that program, however, that, by having a small charge on on your tax bill, and if the towns have voted, I've had it, in my, down in the town of South Shore in Hanover, didn't have it in Ipswich, they went a different way with a, open space bond. But, it's a nice program for, housing, historical buildings, recreation, programs, allows you to bond depending upon a certain percentage, things like that. So I'll give an update on the program and see if something the council might wanna look into. It would require not only council approval, but a ballot vote as well. So just something to kick around, and I'd like to present that as, potentially moving forward as another, source of revenue, and there's a match from the state. A little less now, the city of Boston's in there, but the funding is starting to come back up and creep back up as far as matching funds, so just something that's coming up, sort of coming events. And I know he came back in at my request, and I thank him, but Steve, if you could just give a quick update on the paving project, because I was asked, so.
Absolutely. So the milling work, as we all know, started last week. The paving is scheduled for tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. Of course, Thursday's looking like rain, so it's probably gonna be tomorrow, Friday, and Monday. There's 28 roads left to pave. Bartlett Road, which is a different project, different funding source, was completed yesterday. So all the pavement work is done on Bartlett. The pavement work is done on Seymour and Orlando, and they'll be starting over in the Morton Street area tomorrow. All notices have been passed out. No parking has been posted.
Just want to get that today, but I was asked a few times, so. And I'll certainly entertain any questions from the council. Any follow-up questions?
Any questions? Council Vice President Ruggiero.
Thank you, Council President. Question for Steve. Veterans Road, there was some paving being done there. Was that just a resurface, or is there more happening there that?
No, it's just part of the mill and overlay contract.
Okay, all right, just
It
wanted.
was 2 sections of River Road that we milled. One between
Veterans. Was the paving on Veterans? I got a couple.
Veterans, what did I say?
River.
I'm sorry.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, Veterans Road between Cutler and Washington.
Got it, okay.
And Veterans Road from Hadassah Way to Levy Branson.
Yeah, a few residents in that area had reached out asking what the situation was, but it's just standard,
It's just resurfacing.
Got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
President Lettieri?
Council Ayala.
Just something to think of that would be helpful. We talked last year during the budget cycle, you were just arriving about, and I know there's a move to sort of change the timing, that won't happen for this fiscal year, to try to get a capital planning process that leads to a document that's consistent with the town charter. One thing to think about, that's probably a bunch of meetings, what forum that should be in the capital planning subcommittee. Do you want to hold, you and the director want to hold those meetings? I think we need a process to sort of think about what the table of contents looks like, and then how to populate that, how to have public hearings to get some input on that stuff, and try to sort of just get it right in terms of meeting the full spirit of what the town charter looks like.
Sure.
So if you could think about that and
Yep.
report back, that'd be great.
You got it?
Council Munson.
Thank you, President Lettieri. And thank you for your progress. You're making some great headway.
Getting there.
I didn't, and we've spoken briefly about this with the sidewalks, but a few of my constituents in Precinct 2 asked for my attention and review of some of the sidewalk issues. So with this MAPC, with the ADA grant cycle you're trying to get money for to fix the sidewalks, is it something that is on the onus of the councilors or the or DPW or the residents themselves to actually bring some of the problem areas on the sidewalk? Or is this something that, and is it a comprehensive review of the sidewalk issues for the whole town that you're trying to get money for?
Well, right away, we know there's a few areas I've talked to Director Caller about that need, either, the little rumble strips or access points, things like that. So we're working on those right away. But this will be part of a more, I know it came to light with the trees and everything else, but this will be part of a more comprehensive sidewalk plan that we put together. And then, we won't be able to do it all at once, but we'll start to come up with a phased approach and work forward with it. So more to follow on that, but we are working on it.
If there is need for specific, like, locations, et cetera, I know that the neighbors would love to be able to bring the exact spots to it. And this isn't something that See-Click Fix should be brought to attention to.
That's how they're coming in now.
Oh, they are?
That's how the sidewalk contracts get generated and the rosters for them.
Okay.
Every location comes in through the reporting system. I mean, DPW brings them in as well. I'm constantly on
Right.
those and
You're seeing it yourself,
we
but,
create work requests for things that, that we, happen upon and know about. But the
It might be-
constituents are calling in a See-Click Fix. We go
Okay.
out, we grade them. Not everything can be done
of course.
instantaneously. I mean, it's graded for a hazard,
Right.
and then aesthetics comes afterwards, right?
Wonderful. All right, so I will let my constituents know it's okay and encouraged to actually get on See-Click Fix if they have a prevalent problem. I have a disabled woman, and she can't get past a tree that roots have come up and actually disturbed the actual asphalt that was used as a temporary fix, so.
And you might wanna speak to that. We're trying to put a policy together as to,
To try to address those issues, and when we're actually engaged with MAPC to help us write that policy, when we do that, part of the process will be a public forum, and we can invite people in to
That'd be good, Jeff.
address those kind of concerns as well.
Sounds good. All right, thanks, guys.
All right, and I'd like to take this time, I guess, just to thank Denise and her staff for the state primary on September 6th. Marilyn Popolo and Jill Peterson. Marilyn and Jill are a big part of this, and I thank them as well. I'm a numbers guy. I love to look at numbers, and we changed the locations this time to 2 locations, one at Precinct 4, and we had everything else, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 at the old middle school. And it worked out fantastically. And just to let people know, I think in last November's town election, there was roughly, 2,200 odd voters. We had roughly 2,800 voters in the September 6th primary. Of those 2,800 voters, 1,750 of them voted early at Town Hall in person. So that was at Town Hall in person with just a couple of people at a desk, and cost us basically nothing. Then we had 58 absentee ballots, and 990 people voted in person on Tuesday, on September 6th. So that's 66% of the votes were early voting. Now, is that an aberration? Is that times to come? Not sure, but it definitely makes it viable for this next election, at least, to continue the locations where we are. And, the town clerk has asked me to mention and thank all of the poll workers, Director Caller, who just left, Parks and Rec Director Sean Driscoll, town hall workers that pitched in to help on their own time, and a big shout out to Bill Carroll at the DPW for all his help in setting up the old middle school gym with 5 polling areas, first time ever, and it worked out without any major glitches. So thank you again, Denise, and all your staff and everybody who helped out and volunteered. It worked out really well, and so thank you again for that. Now we will go to old business.
How about the school department.
Old business, trash enterprise fund, trash abatement, school committee report. The school committee report is, we met last evening, and it's a very redundant report because we met on the same exact subject that we met here, and it was with CASA, and we had the presentation. And the school committee was very impressed. And again, I'll say it again, as we said it earlier, it's just, you know, it tugs at your heart when you hear some of the information, and some things we just take for granted and we don't think it happens here, or, you know, kids are involved in whatever kinds of distress they might be involved with. But, you know, to hear that, you can't help but just feel badly and think of what we could do to help. And hopefully as a council here tonight, we offered some financial assistance that will help. But, you know, even that isn't enough. We have to be aware of this and be cognizant of it and understand just the times we're living in right now. And I can't thank CASA enough for all the work they do. So that was the majority of the school committee meeting last night as well. Trash enterprise fund, trash abatement, trash enforcement on old business. Now we'll start throwing stuff, since he's almost done with ordinance review, we'll start throwing more stuff to Rules and Ordinance Way. But we had made a commitment to try to get something in place by September 1st. We did act on one major piece of it by September 1st, which was very good and well received. But I think it's important, especially as we begin the budget season, to try to get a better idea of this enterprise fund and how it's gonna work and to go forward. So I'd ask the Rules and Ordinance to take a look at that again, along with Finance.
You're not off the hook.
I'll actually take some of this heat too,
Yeah.
because they have asked a bunch of
But
questions to me, and I gotta finish
I think it's
work on the
important
policy
that
as
we
well.
look at policies. You know, there's gotta be some coordination with Board of Health to make sure, you know, we're not stepping on toes with ordinances and stuff, but in terms of policy direction and, you know, what we're trying to accomplish. And I think the one goal of this has always been to throw away less trash, right? So whatever we can do to offer to make sure we're doing that, that's a good thing. So we would like to have some sort of feedback, and it could come back in pieces. It doesn't have to come back as one giant step. We're taking baby steps as we've done this. It's been a little over a year and a quarter now, and I think it's working really well. But now it's just time to fine tune it and take a look. Vice President Ruggiero.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we started talking about an all-encompassing trash ordinance, well, whatever, solid waste removal ordinance. I think maybe we might be a possibility that we don't need to make these big, wide, expansive changes to the actual ordinance itself, but if, you know, maybe a policy statement, some recommendations to the town manager. I mean, so let's just maybe have a dialogue about what deliverables we need and what makes the most sense. Instead of, like you mentioned, Councilman, a big sweeping ordinance change that
Right.
might not.
I don't think we need that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll give you 2 weeks.
Yeah, we'll take it back. We'll take it back next. We'll take it back.
The council transfer, we already did. Discussion of CBD parking requirements, back to Vice President Ruggiero, and we've heard comments tonight. We've had some emails. You know, the center looks good, and but we still have to, you know, there are some signs that are up that probably shouldn't be, but they're correct to the ordinance, but they're just not correct to what we want to do. And this is where we get confusion with the public, because we tried to be pretty, I thought we were pretty succinct and detailed when we were discussing the whole live parking area, and then now there's a sign that says no parking, which I guess ordinance way it's correct. And, you know, talking about the handicap spot in front of, for kids only building. And so if we could get in, you know, times, we've had 30-minute parking, 60-minute parking, 2-hour parking. I think, you know, I don't want to give my suggestions, but I think it's important that we come up with a policy that we could start putting signs back up again before the snow flies, and see what happens. But if we have any thoughts on that as a council for the Vice President, that would be great.
Yeah.
Any help, I'm sure he'd love to have. Vice President Ruggiero.
Just quickly, so I thought we did pass a motion as a council to approve live parking in that space. I know this was definitely an area of contention. I'm not sure why the sign says no parking, but we did pass, you know, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure we passed something not too long ago that says live parking is allowed there, so, I definitely would like to look into that.
Yep.
As far as other signage in the area, we had a memo sent to us today, by former Councilor Christopher and, another member of the public, I believe. That might be a good starting place, and then we can kinda work our way out from there, but, I don't wanna recreate work unnecessarily, if, you know, a lot of work went into that memo, so let's dust it off, see what, you know, the impacts would be and move forward. But, you know, obviously, we wanna hear from the business community, so I think that might be the first step, is trying to get as many of those folks in this room, or a room as possible, just to kinda build consensus around it. Admittedly, I'm not down there every day, so it's hard for me or any one of us to sit here and say, you know, what's best. So we gotta start, you know, hearing from people, and let's read some of the documents that are already, worked on. Sorry, that was way more than I wanted to say.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, way more than I wanted to go.
That's okay.
But you sounded good.
Thanks.
Council Flockhart?
I just wanted to commend Peter Christopher's memo. I thought it was very good, and it does need to be redone to some extent, because it is old information, but it was a good place to start.
All right, now we'll go on to new business. Library surplus. We received a letter from the Winthrop Public Library asking that the following items be marked as surplus so that they can be removed at no cost to us by Data Recycling of New England, Berkeley, Mass. And it's 10 computer towers, old Dell computer towers, including peripherals, monitors, keyboards, mice, I think it's mouse, maybe multiple mouse. But I don't know if they want us to remove mice, or if they're removing the mouses for the thing, et cetera. Current value, $0. So, do I have a motion to motion by Councilor Aiello, second by Councilor DeMarco. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
I heard your aye very clearly.
The motion that the town council vote to transfer $2,400 from finance department salary line item to planning department consulting line to pay for a graduate student intern to help with new GIS implementation throughout the town departments and/or any other relative projects, or take any other action relative thereto. We will send that to finance. So that's referred out.
Same for the
There
next two.
is a motion that town council vote to appropriate $139,500 in the Sewer Water Capital Improvement Fund to pay for design and engineering work for the SRF water main project on Revere Street, Crest Ave, and Grover's Ave, or take any other action there too. That will be referred to finance. There is a motion that, no, that's not the motion.
241,000.
So there was a motion to transfer $241,000 from salary reserve to the Winthrop Police Department budget fiscal year 2020, 21, and 22 collective bargaining agreement. We refer that to finance. Council vote to accept provision of Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 13D, compensated absence reserve fund. So this is to, we had talked about this a little bit last year during the budget process, and we had a couple employees that had left and had acquired a payout from accumulated time or contractual payouts. So this is to try to begin a fund. There is no monetary value on this right now. I think there's, will probably be a small portion of free cash that is seeding money for this. So this is putting us in a situation where, you have to look back and look ahead, and what type of exposure do we have out there if, everybody was to leave tomorrow and we had accumulated sick time and this, that, and the other thing. So this is just to put us in a little better position financially. And this is something that's coming from the town manager, and I know I talked to the assistant CFO on this, who is in 100% agreement, so we will also refer that to finance. And there is a motion from the town manager that the town council vote to award the contract of an outside auditor of the accounts of the town to Powers and Sullivan LLC, certified public accountants, or take any other action relative thereto. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second? A motion by Councilor DeMarco, second by Councilor Aiello. Discussion on the motion. And okay, you go first.
Question for the town manager, could you tell us a little bit about the vetting process of this firm and,
The firm I think you've had in place, it's the firm I used at my prior two towns. Powers and Sullivan, they do a great job. So we've had them for years. I mean, certainly if the council wants us to look later, we can, but they've been doing a great job for us. I don't think we need to look to make the change right now.
My thoughts are they've done a good job for a long period of time. My only concern, and I don't know if we could have this in there, is we usually get, we're 2 years behind. So they come out with a suggestion from fiscal year 20 on 19, and it's 2022, and it says, you should do this, this, and this, and we're like, wait a minute,
You don't get an up-to-date management?
we
on it?
don't get it up to date. It's very
I'll
slow.
push to get that,
So
yeah.
if we could push to get a more, timely report, I guess.
Once we get a CFO in place, it'll go a little bit better. I mean, Robbie's working, doing a lot of work.
No, I'm not blaming Robbie in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, we need to
Just-
close out the year before we can call the auditors.
Yeah,
in,
no,
right? So that's
I know,
the-
but
a little bit of
there's still
delay
been
right
a
now.
very big lag time
Yep.
in us
Yep.
receiving a report
Sure.
back.
I mean, we should, all goes well, usually by January, February, you should be reviewing that management letter. So I'll work with Robbie to see what kind of timeframe we can put together.
Okay.
We
And,
need to vote.
yes. There's been a motion by Councilor DeMarco, second by Councilor Aiello. There's been a second. There's been discussion. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Thank you, Tracy.
It's like Tracy pops in and you're like,
I have a couple of appointments. That the town council accept the appointment made by Town Council President Lettieri to reappoint Thomas Schlichting as a constable for the town of Winthrop for a term to expire June 30th, 2025. Motion? Motion by Councilor Belcher, second by Councilor Fusillo. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Motion that the town council accept the appointment made by Town Council President Lettieri to appoint Peter Gill to the Board of Assessors for a term to expire June 30th, 2025.
Motion.
Motion by Councilor Flockhart, second by Councilor Belcher. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Congratulations, Mr. Gill. You're back. Just when you thought you were out, they drag you back in. Second round, public comments. We'll go to Zoom first, and then we'll come back.
Amazingly enough, no.
I was just gonna say something as he's heading out the door.
Yeah, well,
I gotta hit the restroom, sorry. Talk about it, no, thank you.
nothing on Zoom?
Nothing on Zoom?
Okay. In-house, Mr. Schmidt.
I was just gonna, Bill Schmidt, Precinct, I was just gonna commend the town manager, that's why I said that, on recommending the Community Preservation Act. It was actually something that I was thinking about at some point talking about, because it is a really good idea. It's for open space, housing, there's three things, I think it was, maybe it's
Yachts.
historic preservations, et cetera. It's really matching money, we're gonna have a new governor, new legislator, maybe they could put more money in that. So I was just gonna say, great idea, so he can watch the tape.
He's talked about this, I've talked about it with him since he's been here. That was one of the first things he discussed, and it really is a good idea. It gives us funds available to do stuff that we just don't have the funds to do. It gives us the ability to do it, and we don't have to think about it as much, and it gives us the ability to maintain it.
Does it require restrictions on any of this property because it's?
No, it's not on, it's a way to accumulate funds. It's almost, I'd let him explain it better, but it's almost like,
That's okay, you answered my
Franklin.
Get matching
It's-
funds from the state
You
too.
get matching funds from the state, but you have to, it comes from the taxpayers. And then there would be a matching from the state. Now, the match, as he had said, since Boston's initiated, is gone into this, the funds have depleted a little bit because they just get a ton of money. So the match is a little bit less, but it's a really good opportunity to do a lot of things for the town that we're just unable to do. We're really concentrating on the basics, on education, on public safety and stuff like that, and it doesn't give us sometimes the chance to make enhancements that would make the town just that much more attractive and comfortable for us. So I think it's a really good idea, and we'll have much more discussion on it. Mr. Gill, did you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to thank the council for putting the trust in me. I was on the Board of Assessors for 4 or 5 years before, and I really enjoyed it. But I had to resign when I became council president because it made a conflict. And I appreciate the opportunity to get back on there.
Thank you. Well, the housing values have changed a lot since you were on the board.
Oh. Thank you again.
Any public relations? Councilor Fusillo,
None from me.
Councilor Munson,
I will pass this time.
Councilor Belcher,
None for me.
Councilor DeMarco.
I just wanted to say that this weekend is the start of the High Holy Days for the Jewish community. And Rosh Hashanah starts on Sunday, so I would like to wish the Winthrop Jewish community a happy New Year.
Very nice. Councilor Aiello. Nope. Councilor Flockhart.
I assume you're gonna mention the mothers out front.
You can do that. Did a few
There's
things, but that's.
a presentation on air pollution and its burdens on local communities. It's at the Lyceum Room on Thursday, September 29th at 6:30. It's something that's come up in advanced technology about small particles that we weren't focused on so much before with the air pollution that seriously affects Winthrop. And this is something that's an additional layer in our problem. So I think it's worth attention.
Thank you so much. Vice President Ruggiero?
I believe tomorrow evening there's a vigil and.
You didn't mention that, yeah.
All right, I'll.
Go ahead, no.
No,
That's okay, you got it.
if you're looking at I was actually just trying to pull up the details.
Fred
So I
Square.
will.
Yep.
You go.
It's, it's a community event in recognition of National Recovery Month. It starts tomorrow at 6:30.
Yep.
And it's going to
Fantastic.
march from here to the Center Business District.
Yeah, everyone's gonna start to gather here at Town Hall at 6.
Yes.
And then walk down to around 6:30 over to French Square, and then there'll be a vigil and a few speakers and things like that, so.
Yeah. I unfortunately am unavailable. I won't be there, but I encourage my fellow councilors to as well. Powerful stuff, really in line with a lot of what Casa has been talking about earlier today, so.
And,
Mention the purple ribbons.
It ties into that,
Yeah.
initiative as well. I'm not sure if there's a direct.
Yeah, but it's all related.
But
It's all related,
National
yeah.
Recovery.
It's all the recommend,
Yeah.
recognize the month. That was, also came out of the health department, the initiative for the ribbons. They teamed up with 2 other communities, I believe, and people sponsored them, and we put them all over town, so it was a great program.
and I'll say, because there's so many Halloween lovers on the council here, that last night at the school committee meeting, we discussed, the WPG and the ATC PTOs are once again doing the trunk or treat for Halloween. It's a really great event. There's limited spaces available behind the ATC in the parking area. And they need people to volunteer their time and resources to go down, and either you back your car in and you do it out of the back of your trunk and you're handing out candy, similar to what was done in the center, but on a smaller scale, but a little more room and a little more off the streets. So it was a great event. They need your support. And I'm sure you could contact the ATC PTO or the WPG PTO. And it's still a month away, month plus, I guess, but it is a great event, and I encourage people to attend or to donate. And anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Tracy, did you have anything?
No, I did not. Thank you for asking. Thanks, Denise.
No problem.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by everyone. Motion by Council DeMarco, second by Council Fusillo. Any discussion on it? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
Greg.
guys.